The many traditions associated with Christmas can be traced back for centuries, although many originated in both Europe and the US during the 19th century. Most of our traditions originated in Europe and were brought here by early settlers. Later, magazines, newspapers, books, sheet music, and travel brought more as things evolved. In the South, people followed the English traditions of celebration, which were far more lively and elaborate than those in the more Puritan New England area. Indeed, in the North, Christmas was considered just another workday until 1856, and any celebrating was done quietly in the home. By the time of the Civil War, both North and South were celebrating in a similar way. Traditionally, celebrations began a week before Christmas or before Advent and continued to Twelfth Night, also called Epiphany or Old Christmas. Stir Up Sunday was the fifth Sunday before Christmas, when housewives would mix up the Christmas pudding or fruit cakes. The forerunner to these desserts can be traced to Roman times. During the Crusades, spices were brought back from the East to add to preserved fruit. From the 14th to the 17th centuries, it was more like a porridge or soup called frumenti. Beginning in the 17th century, suet replaced meat, and plums, eggs, breadcrumbs, and spirits were added to make the cake or pudding thicker. And it also lasted longer. By 1858, it was still called plum pudding, although plums had typically been replaced by raisins. Christmas puddings were stirred up using 13 ingredients to represent Christ and the 12 disciples. Sometimes charms were mixed in to give luck to those who found them in their serving. After combining the ingredients, the pudding was tied up in cheesecloth to form a ball and was boiled for 4 or 5 hours. It would then be unwrapped and allowed to dry out. Once dry, it was rewrapped and soaked in brandy. It would be placed in a crock to age with brandy added at intervals. To serve, a sprig of holly was placed on top to represent the crown of thorns. Fruit cakes probably originated in their current form in Germany. Typically, 2 would be made, with 1 cake to be saved for the coming year's harvest season to guarantee good luck during harvest. The cake was made with dried fruit, spices, preserved fruit, and candied fruit. Frequently, a coin or other token was mixed in the batter to bring good luck to the person who got it in their slice of cake. In the colonies, sugar was used in place of the original honey. Cakes, too, were wrapped in cheesecloth and kept soaked with brandy. These cakes have been known to last for many years. Once a 150-year-old cake was sliced and declared still edible. Beginning on the 6th of December, or St. Nicholas Day, this marked the beginning of the celebration season, with small gifts given mostly to children. However, Christmas celebrations, for the most part, were adult events. This was the season of entertaining. Card parties with whist, piquet, cribbage, and commerce were popular. Balls, amateur theatricals, and various other amusements were frequently held. Balls typically began at 10 o'clock p.m. with supper between 12:30 and 1. Ladies who wished to dance would pin up the trains of their gowns, and once that was done, they could not decline any gentleman that asked them to dance. Dances included reels, country dances, and the quadrilles. By the 1850s, the cotillion had become outmoded. December 21st, or St. Thomas Day, was the time elderly women and widows went a Thomasing for gifts of food or money. It was sometimes called going a gooding. Both children and adults might go a wassailing. Wassailing comes from the Welsh washeil, meaning good health. That in turn came from the much earlier Old Norse Vasil. Children went a wassailing to beg for apples. They would sing, "Wassel, wassel through the town. If you've got any apples, throw them down. Up with the stocking, down with the shoe. If you've got no apples, money will do." For adults, wassailing meant being invited in after carols for a punch such as syllabub or spirits served from the wassail bowl. There was no wassailing in New England for a long time, as spirits and the associated rowdiness were frowned upon. In early Anglo-Saxon tradition, a wassail bowl was smashed against a tree for good luck, and that is how we got the practice of smashing a champagne bottle when ships are launched. Caroling dates at least to the time of Shakespeare. The oldest carols date to the 3rd century. During the Civil War, camp soldiers could hear their enemies singing carols across the lines. Old Little Town of Bethlehem was not written until 1868, so they would not have sung it. Carols they would hear. Silent Night was written by necessity in Obendorf, Austria in 1818. The small church of St. Nicholas, not far from Salzburg, had just suffered the calamity of having its organ break on Christmas Eve. Desperate for music that could be played on a guitar, the church's only other instrument, the organist Franz Gruber wrote the music, while the priest, Joseph Mohr, wrote the words. After Christmas, when the repairman came for the organ repair, they performed the song for him. As far as they were concerned, that was it. They didn't plan to use it anymore. However, he loved it, and he memorized it and sang Silent Night wherever he went. It became so popular, it was finally written down and published in 1840. Christmas Bells was written on Christmas Day of 1863. At the age of 57, he was widowed, the father of 6 children. He was sad, depressed, and fearful for his sanity. He was in deep mourning for his wife, who had died in a fire that summer while attempting to use candle wax to seal clippings of their children's hair. Napping, he was awakened by her screams. He tried to put out the fire, but it was too late and she died the next day. Because of the burns he suffered, he wore a beard for the rest of his life. In November, his 17-year-old eldest son, Charles, was severely wounded on the battlefield at New Hope Church, and it was feared that his son might be paralyzed for life. Earlier, he had gone in December with his younger son to bring Charles home. It was in this dark moment of his life that he heard the bells of Cambridge ringing from nearby churches. His poem was not set to music until 1873. As the musical version was written 8 years after the war, the reference to the war and the cannons of the South were expurgated. His poem, I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And thought how, as the day had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Till ringing, singing on its way, the world revolved from night to day, a voice, a chime, a chant sublime of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then from each black, accursed mouth, the cannon thundered in the south, and with the sound, the carols drowned of peace on earth, goodwill to men. It was as if an earthquake rent the hearthstones of a continent and made forlorn the households born of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then peal the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. December 24th, Christmas Eve. On that day, houses were decorated with evergreens, which stayed up until Epiphany, when they would be removed and burned to prevent bad luck. Holly and ivy were popular and were ancient symbols of fertility. The evergreens came to represent a loving couple in a happy, prosperous home. Hanging mistletoe dates to the Druids, where it symbolized welcome into a home and fertility. It became popular in the US as a kissing branch after 1819, when Washington Irving published Old Christmas, following a Christmas he celebrated in England. The actual practice there dated to sometime between 1720 and 1784. The first recorded Christmas tree was in Freiburg, Germany in 1419. It was decorated with wafers, gingerbread, apples, and tinsel. Later, Germans became famous for blown glass decorations. Trees did not become popular in England until Queen Victoria was on the throne. With her German heritage, she put up the first one in 1848. The tradition quickly spread to the US, although it was not as widespread as evergreen decorations. Trees here were decorated with strings of cranberries, popcorn, small toys, candy, fruit, homemade decorations, such as paper cutouts. President Pierce put up the first White House Christmas tree in 1856. However, Christmas did not become a national holiday until President Grant enacted the law in 1870. In 1863, Lincoln had declared Thanksgiving a national holiday. The hanging of Christmas stockings was first mentioned in Irving's Old Christmas in 1819. In 1822, Clement Clark Moore also mentioned hanging stockings in his famous poem written for his own children, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." It was originally a Dutch tradition brought here by settlers on Manhattan, where children left their shoes or stockings to be filled by Santa Claus. On the eastern end of the island, settled by Puritans from New England, Christmas was illegal for the next 200 years. Santa Claus, also called Santa Claus, or St. Nicholas, was born in present-day Demre, Turkey, sometime around 280 AD. An epidemic killed his wealthy parents, and he was raised by his uncle, the Bishop of Patara. He decided as a boy to use his wealth to help the less fortunate. He went on to become a priest and later a bishop. During his life, he became famous for his many good deeds and generosity. It is from the Dutch Protestants on Manhattan that we get Santa Claus. For the Dutch, Santa traveled in a horse-drawn sleigh that flew through the air. In 1822, Clement Clark Moore wrote "Was the Night Before Christmas," originally titled "A Visit from St. Nicholas," which was published 1 year later in 1823. In it, he stated Santa arrived on the rooftops with reindeer pulling the sleigh. It was in this poem that the reindeer got their names. However, Rudolph did not come along until 1939, when Robert L. May, a copywriter from Montgomery Ward, came up with the story of Rudolph. It was Washington Irving that stated Santa Claus came down the chimney. At that time, Santa Claus arrived on St. Nicholas Eve, December 24th. Santa did not get moved to the North Pole until after 1869. Prior to that, he moved around at various addresses. Thomas Nast, the political cartoonist for Harper's Weekly, in 1862 began illustrating Santa as the image we now associate with him. The first Christmas card was designed in England in 1843 by J.C. Horsley for Mr. Henry Cole, who was tired of writing individual Christmas letters. The idea quickly spread to the U.S., where Louis Prane, the father of American Christmas cards, began illustrating Christmas scenes during the Civil War. It was not until 1873 that he began selling cards produced by his company. The Yule log was anointed with oil, salt, and wine, and was lit using splinters saved from the previous year's Yule log. It represented the destruction by fire of the past year's miseries. The log was large, as it had to last on the night of Christmas Eve until the night of the Epiphany, or it brought bad luck to the household. If it cast a headless shadow, that person would die in the coming year, according to the superstition of the time. What was left of the log and the ashes were kept all year to ward off bad luck. The Yule candle was a large candle, as it had to burn from dusk on Christmas Eve until dawn of the 25th. It brought luck to all those on whom it shone, unless you happen to get in the way of the Yule log. While robins have a red breast, at the Nativity, Mary was shivering with cold as the fire in the stable was going out. A robin saw what was happening, hovered over the fire, fanning its wings to get it going again. The fire burnt the robin's breast red, and so it has remained. The legend of the Poinsettia. Long ago in Mexico, a little orphan boy was sad that he was alone, poor, and had no Christmas gift to take to the church, as was the custom. As he watched the village going to the church laden with gifts, he sank to his knees and began to cry. Where his tears fell to earth, a beautiful red flower began to grow. The villagers named it La Flor de Noche Buena, or the flower of the holy night. In 1829, the American ambassador to Mexico, Joel Poinsett, brought some back to his home in South Carolina, where it quickly spread in popularity as a Christmas decoration. December 25th, Christmas Day, was celebrated by attending church service in the morning, followed by a feast late in the day. This feast was sadly curtailed in the South during the Civil War due to the impoverishment of the war. Desserts were typically made with honey and whatever they might have had on hand or had produced. Families still tried to provide cheer for their children by making gifts and decorating with greenery. Carols were sung to lift spirits, and games were played as these cost nothing. Goose or turkey was the Christmas meat. Turkeys are native to the New World, but were not called turkeys until they were mistakenly labeled such by the English, who imported a similar fowl from Madagascar through Turkey. In the South, during the Civil War, such luxuries were unavailable. Here, a squirrel or even a muskrat might hold place of honor, and luxurious desserts were only dreamed of. Mince pies became popular in the 13th century and came to symbolize the variety of gifts brought by the Magi, such as citrus fruits and spices, originally brought back to Europe by the Crusaders. It was traditionally made in an oblong shape to represent the manger, and a pastry Christ child would be placed in the center of the top. During the Reformation, some anatomically raunchy additions were made to the Christ child, causing it to be outlawed in New England. However, the pies remained popular in the rest of the colonies and in the later United States. Christmas cookies in various shapes were introduced by the Dutch in early 1600s on Manhattan. It was not until the advent of commercially available cookie cutters in 1871, making it easier, then they became widely popular. German and Moravian immigrants popularized ginger and sugar cookies in the 1700s. Candy canes supposedly go all the way back to 1670 in Cologne, Germany, when a priest asked the local confectioner to make them to keep children quiet and occupied during a sermon. The shape represented the shepherd's crook with the crooked top, making it more appropriate for children to have them in church. By the mid-19th century, it was a favorite Christmas treat. During the Civil War, Harper's Weekly published many illustrations by Thomas Nast depicting the celebration of Christmas.
Oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of the dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared.
The following letter excerpt was written by Andrew W. Davis on December 25th, 1861, from Camp Wycliffe, Kentucky, and it was addressed to his daughters, Orilla and Nan. And I'm assuming he was in the Yankee Army because of what he ate. This is Christmas night, no doubt, while I'm sitting in my tent in a war camp, you're enjoying yourselves at Christmas supper, which I understand you're having at the courthouse. No doubt you're enjoying yourselves over your Christmas presents, and I hope Santa Claus in his rambles last night did not miss the stockings of my two little girls and put something in them to make them happy. We did not have drill today. Consequently, I do not feel as tired as I do some nights. I will tell you what we had to eat today, as you no doubt would like to know. Well, we had roast chicken, oysters, peach pie, dried beef, molasses, brisket, butter, crackers, milk, sweet potatoes, rice, eggs, etc. So you see, we did not starve. It was not cooked as nice as your mother could cook it, but it was very good. We bought most of it from country people, and they sell cheap enough if only they could cook well. But they are poor people who bring them, and they cook them by the fire and skillets, as they have no cook stoves. Stuffed chickens cooked are worth 20 to 25 cents. Pies, 10 cents. Cabbage, 5 cents. Apples, 6 for 5 cents. Milk, 10 cents a quart. Roast turkeys, 75 cents and 80 cents, depending on the size. Sweet potatoes, 75 cents a bushel, and many other things about the same. December 26th, Boxing Day, or St. came from the English tradition of giving servants Christmas boxes. Churches gave money to the poor from their alms boxes. Prior to the war, it was traditional for the wealthy to hold fox hunts on this day. December 31st, New Year's Eve, was the day for house cleaning. Ashes, rags, scraps, and trash were all removed to prevent bad luck in the coming year. In certain parts of Italy, they still do that. At midnight, everyone gathered in a circle to usher out the old year and welcome in the new. Scottish families practiced first footing. Usually a handsome young man, the first to enter the house just after midnight, arrived by the front door, left by the back door, taking all of the old year's troubles with him. January 6th, 12th night or Epiphany, honored the coming of the Magi. This was the climax of the season, with parties, balls, and the exchanging of small gifts. Games such as bobbing for apples, musical chairs, blind man's bluff, charades, or bullet pudding were played. In bullet pudding, you used only your teeth to find and extract a bullet from a mound of flour. All decorations would be removed at the end of the evening. The Yule log would be extinguished and both it and the ashes saved for the next Christmas. Ashes were scattered in the fields to ensure a bountiful harvest, and the log from the last year was used to start the next year's fire. We're going to show my books next. I hope you will look at them, read about them. My latest one is the Mystery of Sarah Slater, and I absolutely love that book. It's biographical, and in the back I include biographical blurbs on each of the people she came in contact with while she served as a courier. She mysteriously vanished on the way to Montreal, carrying a message for the South out of Richmond. She and the message and the gold she was carrying vanished. There's been one other written about her book. It was totally fictitious. Mine, I tried to follow the facts as closely as I could, and at the back, I gave you some various alternatives to explore so you can come up with your own idea of what happened with Sarah.